Hello.
Let's start with your experience with track and field. How old were you when you first started running? And at one point, did you realize that you could run in college?
Yeah, so I started running track when I was 8 years old. At that point, it was just like the fun of it was just to like stay in the lane. Everyone gets a ribbon at the end. But as I got into middle school, I started to realize I was actually pretty good at it. And I got into Junior Olympics. I was training all year round. I was doing, the winter and the summer track, the spring track, and training with a local track club in my hometown in Massachusetts. And then, as I continued on getting into high school, starting to break school records and winning different competitions, just really, noticed that there was something there that I could continue on. And of course, like there's always the next phase that we're thinking about, right? And especially as you're thinking about college, you're like, well, how am I going to pay for this? So, track was also a big part of that for me as well as the passion around it, but also knowing that it could be a space for me to like make college more of a reality, in that sense from a financial perspective. And yeah, I'm grateful that it turned into something that I was able to compete at the Division II collegiate level, at University of New Haven and continue on my track career. I was primarily a 400 runner. I ran the 4x400 as well, and sometimes the 200, sometimes the 800. But the 400 was my main event, mostly through high school and college.
What was the recruitment like to D2?
Mm. Yeah, so I did a couple of different overnights at different schools. Some coaches reached out to me. Other coaches, I reached out to them. At University of New Haven, I actually reached out to that coach. At the time, I was really focused in on forensic psychology and criminal justice. And I stumbled upon University of New Haven. It was the number 2 school in the country for forensics. So I was like, okay, great. I want to go here and then looked into the track program. And the coach had done like an incredible job with a couple of athletes, but one in particular, she came in and she was running 60 seconds in the 400. And then she ended up graduating, running 54 seconds, being like a 9-time All-American, like a national champion. So I was like, oh, like I want to work with this person. So I reached out to him and he was equally as interested in me. So he came out, he saw me compete. And it was interesting having like different scenarios, different colleges that I could have gone to and having different conversations with different coaches. But for me, what was really important, of course, was the education piece and the track piece, but was also like the school culture and the team culture. And going to different campuses, I didn't get the same feel that I did at University of New Haven of how tight knit the team was, which was really important to me. And so it just kind of flowed from there, like continuing having those conversations, kind of negotiating around scholarship funds. And yeah, before I knew it, I did my overnight, loved it, and then I was on campus as an athlete, as a student and an athlete.
So, what was it about UNH among the other schools specific to the track program
Yeah.
that brought you in? Because I talked to a fair amount of athletes who are bamboozled a bit by their
Mm.
recruitment versus stepping on campus and being in that culture. What was it at the overnight that kind of told you that this is not just a facade, a
Mm.
recruiting facade?
Yeah. So, I think my coach was pretty strategic. I think he definitely wanted me and the other girls that came to campus that weekend to really, sign and become one of his athletes. So he had us come during homecoming weekend. And of course, it's like so much fun. And I'm a high school student. I'm like, oh, like this is what college is like. Like this is so amazing. So that was part of it. It was just like a fun weekend, but my host was super incredible, answered all of my questions. And we did a team dinner that night. They invited me, and I was at the team dinner, and it was just so fun, like watching how kind everyone was to each other. Like they actually genuinely were like friends. And that was something that was really important to me because at other schools, it seemed a lot more like catty. And I didn't want that kind of dynamic. So when I was on campus, it was like the fun of homecoming, and it was just the team and how tight knit they were, and not just in like being friends, but also supportive and loving towards each other. And when I asked questions, it was never like I was asking too much or, being put off. So that was also really helpful. I got to see a practice, so that was good to kind of get a sense of like, of course, my coach is putting on like his P's and Q's, but it was good to see like coaching style a little bit. And he just drew me in as well. Like I said, I just loved how he got that one athlete from 60 seconds to 54 seconds. And for me, that just if you've ever been a track athlete, you know how much in a sprint those seconds are so difficult. Like you're trying to get a tenth of a second faster, not a whole second. And to see that change was like, oh my gosh, that's remarkable. And I had somewhat of a similar change. So I just really believed in him and his method, and he believed in me too. So it just felt like he became a friend too very early on, which was helpful in my decision.
So I saw that you only went about 2 hours away from home. A
Yeah.
good versus bad decision.
I think it was a great decision. I'm super close with my parents, and so for me, it was like I wanted to be close enough that I could come home anytime I wanted, but that I wasn't that close that I would like run into them at the grocery store. So 2 hours was perfect. And honestly, I'm so thankful because I was in New England still, they were able to come to so many of my track meets. I feel like they might have only missed like five track meets, like out of all the ones I ran in college. Because so many of them happened in Boston, where my family is from. And then even in Connecticut, they just always made the drive. And so that meant so much to me. So yeah, it was a perfect distance for me.
I saw that you broke 5 school records and were an All-American. Could you have predicted that when you stepped on campus as a freshman?
Yeah, no, you're bringing up lots of memories now of like how I felt when I was a freshman. Could I have predicted that? No, I think, in high school, I was able to break 60 seconds in the 400, which is great for a high school runner. I got to 58 seconds. And I think in college, so much of the beginning with my coach in particular is like almost breaking you down to build you up and from a sense of like your form. And so I regressed a little bit there, which was so frustrating in the beginning because, you're like, oh, I'm a collegiate athlete, I should be doing better. But I had to adjust to the new way of running. I think for most high school track athletes, you're just running. You're going off of pure talent. When you get to college, now you're really focusing on your talent and your technique, and your lifting, and like, and. So that was a big shift for me. So to answer your question, no, I would have never predicted any of the success that I had. I mean, from the school records to All-American to Woman of the Year, like I would have, that was like, so sometimes still I'm like, did that actually happen?
Yeah, I know. I saw an NCAA record 480 nominations for a Woman of the Year.
Mm-hmm.
That's incredible.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, so out of the 480 women, yep, I was one of the top 30 finalists. And that was an incredible experience to get to go to the NCAA headquarters with 30 other incredible, talented women who were excelling in their sport as well. It was just such an inspirational space. So, yeah, I'm grateful that I was chosen among so many women that deserved it just as much.
So what does that mean to be a finalist for the Woman of the Year?
Yeah, so it means that you're excelling in your sport, in your academics, and in the community as well. So just being like that really well-rounded athlete, cares about others, really pours into your, sportsmanship, being a good teammate, showing up for the team as a leader, as a teammate, all of those different things. And so each conference submits athletes based off of the different parameters. So a lot of times, I don't know the exact process, but a lot of times I'm sure they look at like, okay, the standout athletes. Okay, now the standout people. Okay, let's see who we can kind of niche down on. And then they vote and they decide. So each conference chooses their Woman of the Year, which I was the Woman of the Year for the Northeast 10. And then from there, the NCAA has their process and they choose the top 30 from that. So yeah, the process is wild, and it's interesting that you asked me this because I think it's just for me it's so not natural. I don't usually bloat about this. It's not the kind of type of person I am. But yeah, I'm like, oh yeah, I was a top 30 woman of the year. But then I think to actually like have this conversation, it's like, wow, like it is such a dialed down process. And for me to have been chosen for that is actually like really, really powerful. So I appreciate you even like bringing me back to the space of like grounding me in that.
I mean, you graduated with a 3.98.
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
that is incredible. You were doing so much and still you were having this anxiety and depression. How do
Yeah.
you
Mhm.
balance being so high functioning on the track and in the classroom and also being constantly at war with yourself?
Yeah. Great question. So I had struggled with anxiety my entire life, and it was just something we never talked about. Mental health was just never talked about in my family. It was never talked about in athletics. I mean, we've made so much shifts since then, but when I was in high school and college, it just wasn't talked about at all. And I think how I was so high functioning was that I was driven by the need to be perfect, the need for other people to validate me. So I pushed and I pushed and I pushed so that I could look perfect on the outside and have everybody cheering for me, which was only feeding what I didn't have for myself, self-worth, self-love, like any of that confidence. So they were giving that to me, but it wasn't filling the hole that I had for myself. So like yes, I had all these accomplishments, but for me, and that's why I said it's so nice to like reflect back and the growth that I've had in my own mental health because I can even remember sitting at the NCAA headquarters being a top 30 finalist, but then they whittle it down to the top 15, and then they have the NCAA Woman of the Year. When I wasn't selected for the top 15, it was like, well, this top 30 means nothing now because I didn't get that next extra level of validation. It was like this big accomplishment now doesn't mean as much. The same thing with like being all American. Like, yes, wonderful accomplishment, but I tied my self-worth to running that 54 seconds that I mentioned that one particular athlete was able to run. I see that he has done this for this athlete. I want that. That is perfect. And so poured my self-worth into running that time and I got close, but I didn't run 54. So it just fueled this self-hate and it was like nothing was ever enough. So I was able to push because of the desire for perfection, but in turn, I just lost myself more and more.
When did you realize that you were going to struggle in silence for a while?
That's a really good question. I think in college, it probably came the most to light. And, as I mentioned, like with no talk about mental health, and unfortunately having teammates that had said some negative things about people who struggled with their mental health, not directed at anyone on the team, but just like general kind of comments. And these are people I looked up to, current leaders on the team. It almost added this dynamic of like, I'm not going to be able to talk about this. And my coach was very much like focused only on track. And if I went to him about anything outside of track, it was always brought back to track. And I did that very rarely. And so I learned that this is not a safe space for me to talk about anything because it's always going to be brought back to, okay, let's work on your sorry, I'm losing my train of thought. Let's work on your technique, right? Let's see like what we can change like in the lifting room. Like what can we do differently here versus what's happening in your mind? How's your mental health? Right? What are you saying to yourself in the blocks? Like what's holding you back from reaching this goal? How can I support you? Here are resources that exist. Like those conversations were just never had and I think I just learned that we just don't talk about anything other than the end goal. Running that 54 seconds, going to nationals, becoming all American. That's it. And becoming national champions. Like that's it. Um, and that was I think really eye-opening for me in a bad way that I have to just struggle in silence in order to keep my spot, keep my scholarship, keep my status as a perfect person. I have to I have to struggle in silence.
What do you think that coaches are doing wrong surrounding the mental health of their athletes? Because it sounds like you had a very good coach, a very good person
Mm,
as a coach. It was just this mental health was not a conversation that you thought you could have with them. What do you
yeah.
think the coaches are doing wrong?
Right. Yeah, I had a phenomenal coach in terms of being a track coach, and he's a kind, loving person. He just, you just don't know what you don't know. And I think a lot of coaches, for one, don't know how to have conversations around mental health. They're too afraid to have conversations around mental health because what if someone does say that they're struggling with suicidal ideation? Or what if somebody does need a day off? Well, then do I give them a day off and the rest of the teammates, are they going to be pissed off at me? Are they going to say something? Is that going to like ruin the team morale? There's just so much fear that there becomes inaction versus being able to see that when you do act, when you do take consistent measures to implement self care and mental wellness into the day to day with your athletes, it makes a difference for not only how they feel about themselves, but their athletic performance. So I think a lot of coaches are just doing it wrong in the sense that they're using fear as a way to just not even learn and to make changes. Or they're learning, but they don't think it really applies to them or their team because all of their athletes look like they have it all together, like I did, right? They're like, well, I should be looking out for the kid who's crying every day or, sitting in the corner and not showing up. And I think it's so important for coaches to know. And that's why I'm so open about sharing my story that it's not always the one who looks like they're struggling. It is, right? It is. And we need to care about those people too. But also your star athlete, your star student, like they matter too. And they're most likely struggling with anxiety and perfectionism and self-doubt and. So I think that they're just getting it wrong and like just feeling so fearful to not even try. Like I said, you don't know what you don't know, and it's so important to get educated.
When you are in a sport where mere seconds dictate a podium finish versus a congratulations, thanks for coming, how do you not become a perfectionist?
Yeah. And I think as an individual sport as well, where it really is all on you, especially except for in a relay, it is very easy to have that perfectionist mindset. I think what helps is recognizing that it is okay if you begin to feel that way, but what are the tools you're going to use to help you to mitigate it or to move through it or so that it doesn't completely like crash your entire world down if you don't reach that goal. So how can you feel into like the drive that you have to reach the goals and to win the race and to get a positive to get a personal record, a personal best, right? How can you use that drive to go for that? But also, how can you give yourself self-love when things don't go the way that you wanted them to? And that's where I think that the line is really important. Like, have the drive, but use that same drive and ambition you use in your athletic space towards your mental health as well.
So I don't interview a ton of track athletes, but I'm always just intrigued by the psychology of the middle distances because you have your sprinters and they're done. You have your long distance, but there's something about the longer sprints, the middle
Mhm.
distances that fascinates me. Can you talk a bit about how you mentally prepare yourself to run middle distances?
Yeah. So my coach used to say the 400 is a grown man's race, which like is kind of, but you're not technically supposed to run that fast, that long. Like your body is going to break down. And there are the four P's of the 400 that Michael Johnson, a Olympian way back in the day had coined. And so it's push, pace, position, pray. So the last 100 meters of the race, like you're just praying. You're praying that your legs aren't going to give out. And like it all comes down to like your form and like really trusting into the training that you've put in. But it's so draining. And it's like you almost dread that last part because no matter how much you train, that last part is always going to hurt because you're not supposed to run that long. Like my coach used to always say as well, I can't coach you past 350 meters, right? Like that last 50 meters is just all heart. And so it's like, so who wants it the most at that point? And I think like how you mentally prepare for it, I didn't do it well. I was more so in the I can't do this. I'm not good enough. Like, what if I mess up? What if I get hurt? Like, this is just gonna suck. I'm not gonna like spiraling, spiraling, spiraling. But I think one of the biggest things I would recommend to people is having your different like anxiety regulation tools, whether that's, meditating before or journaling before or shaking out the anxiety literally before you're about to compete. Knowing that it's going to be painful, but also knowing that you have the strength to get through it and knowing that both can exist. It doesn't have to be one or the other. So that's what I wish I had done more of and like just allowed myself to have more fun with it versus having so much pressure. But it's a hard race. I don't recommend it.
So what do you tell yourself in those last 50 to 100 meters once you become past coachability, which I think is
Yeah.
hilarious to tell someone.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, I feel like it's like meant to inspire you of like, okay, like, use your heart, like all the love you have for this race. And it's like, well, I hate this race right now. My whole body's on fire. Um, I think the biggest thing is like keeping the finish line in view, knowing that it's going to come and really just like focusing down on your form was always the most important thing. Like, because if you don't, then it's like the mind, the body takes over and you just really do. Like, it's like you're watching somebody like running in place at that point because you can see like they're starting to break down. I think the other thing too is like at the end, everyone runs the 400 different, and there's the right way, and then there's the wrong way, and then there's someone's way, right? And there's always going to be somebody potentially that comes out of the woodworks and is passing you at the end. And whenever you get past, it's like your morale just completely shuts down. And then you again kind of just start running in place. So it's more so just like, my coach used to always say as well, like just run your race. And I wish I had implemented that more of like, okay, it doesn't matter that she just passed me, like just keep running your race because you can pass her back, right? There's still time in the race, even though there's only 50 meters, so much can happen in those 50 meters. So much can happen like literally a meter before the finish line. Like it's happened when someone thinks they're winning and then they lose right at the finish line. So I think it's form, running your race, staying focused, and just knowing the finish is near.
When you're struggling in your daily life with anxiety and depression, how does that manifest in that 100-meter
Hmm.
internal push?
Yeah, yeah. I think when you have so much self-doubt and self-hate and someone passes you, okay, now I'm not enough, right? Or you feel your body start to break down. It's just like all of the negative self-talk, like I can't do this, like I'm not gonna make it, like you should have trained harder. This is why that you should have done this and that. And it just like becomes this overthinking versus focusing on what you should be doing. And the energy starts to get put into a different space. And then if your mind shuts down, your body's going to shut down. And I think for me, it was like, instead of focusing on finishing the race, I was looking at the time right at the finish line. And so again, I'm chasing this 54 seconds and it's almost like I'm starting to do math in my head. Okay, it's at 47 seconds right now. If I just get to it's like just finish the race instead of being like, okay, I have 8 seconds to go and if I've done this before, and it's just like I think it was just too much of the negative self-talk and the fixation on the 54 seconds and the fixation on like, where's coach? Is he going to be happy with me afterwards? Is he going to give me a hug after? Is he going to give me the silent treatment? Like, those were all the things going through my head more so than anything else of like just focusing in on like, you've got this, you can do this, trust the training. It was everything but that, unfortunately.
What was your breaking point?
Mhm. I think my breaking point was probably actually once I finished my 4 years at University of New Haven. Actually, I think I had a breaking point before then. It was um, it was our Northeast 10 conference championships my junior year, and we were at American International College in Springfield. And Springfield's like not the safest place. And I didn't run my 54 seconds. I didn't win the conference championships like we had been talking about, for months. And I was, really on track to do so. But again, let the mental health struggles take me from doing that. And after competing and feeling like a failure yet again, I just like disappeared. I just like ran down a random street in Springfield and I was just like gone for like a very long time, just truly just drowning in self-hate. And it's almost like a block in my memory because I remember being gone. I don't remember exactly what I was saying or doing. I just remember like I was crying and like I was just so frustrated with myself. Um, and then I think why that was such a breaking point for me was because when I came back before the 4x400, it was like I just had to suck it up and pretend like I wasn't away for however long, crying miserable about being a failure and hating myself. And I had to put a baton in my hand and run a race again. So I think that was a breaking point for me because it only solidified for me that I wasn't going to run this time. I felt like very stuck, like I'm not going to run this time. And no matter how I feel, I just have to push past it because I have to do this for my teammates and for my coach. And nobody's going to ask me where I was, what I was doing, and if I was okay. So I think that was a big breaking point for me. But then also when I graduated from college and I didn't run that 54 seconds, it was like my whole world came crashing down because there was no more track meets. It wasn't like I could say, okay, well, I have next Saturday. It was done. I wasn't competing anymore. And like that true feeling of a failure, like really sat deep into my soul. And then I was also beginning to lose my identity as well as a track athlete from no longer having that since I was 8 years old. So that's really what began my spiral into like a deep depressive episode and struggling with suicidal ideation because I just didn't know who I was anymore. And the person that I was, all I knew about her was that she was a failure.
Where do you go from there? Like, it's easy
Yeah.
enough to say, like, go and talk to someone, but
Mhm.
when you feel like you can't win, what comes
Yeah.
next?
Yeah. It's a really good question. I spent a lot of time just like fighting demons in my own head. As I mentioned, struggling with suicidal ideation and just like wanting the universe to like take me away. And this was a solid like 2 years that this went on for. And like, again, like perfectionist mentality. I'm in the workplace now, trying to reach new goals and just kind of like pretending like I'm okay, planting the smile on my face. Nobody knew still that I was struggling, just like nobody knew in college or high school. And it wasn't until I had a conversation one day, like a casual lunch date with a friend, and she just opened up to me about her struggle with her mental health. And she told me she was getting help through therapy. And looking back at that conversation, it always amazes me because I was a psychology major in college. Like I knew about therapy. I knew about anxiety and depression, but like I knew but I didn't know because it was like someone else's problem. Like it couldn't be me. Like I couldn't be weak or lazy or crazy, right? Like I believed the stigma as much as I like couldn't talk about it. I believed the stigma. And it was just so different for me when she told me that she was getting help because she was my high school track teammate. I cannot speak today. She was my high school teammate and it was just like so incredible how she opened up to me just so easily. And that just like broke down a wall for me. This other person who I also think that she looks like she has it all together. Like she is struggling and she's doing something about it. And like that was the biggest difference between the two of us is that like we were both struggling, but she was doing something. And like I wanted to experience that. Like I was just sick and tired of being sick and tired. I was struggling. I was in this like really emotionally abusive relationship because that's what I thought I deserved. And so that conversation really just like saved my life because that's what allowed me to finally set up an appointment with a therapist and get the help that I've needed since I was a little girl.
Does your friend know about this?
Yeah, she does. I've told her many times, and thankfully, I've had many conversations like this that I've, shared on different podcasts and articles and things like that. And I'm so grateful because, she was just sharing what was on her heart. And I think that's why it's so powerful to be vulnerable because you just never know. You never know who needs to hear your words. So, yeah, she does know.
What is your relationship with therapy and how has it changed since you were in high school?
Yeah. Definitely had no relationship with therapy until the couple of years after college. And, it was just such a life-changing experience to be able to start to really name my anxiety, my triggers, my trauma, understand where some of it came from, and to really start to learn some new tools. And that was the most important part of it was to learn some new tools to how to learn to like myself, which grew into learning to love myself and to really start to find my voice and know that my voice mattered and it wasn't a sign of weakness to talk about my mental health. Having a trained professional on the other side who really knew about my struggles and wanted me to move through them and get through them and to be there with me every step of the way was just so valuable for me. And yeah, I'm so thankful for therapy and all that it's done for me. I mean, it's helped me to be able to share my story in the way that I do now, because there was the shining light at the end. But I also, want people to know, right? It's not like you get help and then you're fixed and everything's good. Like healing is a lifelong journey, and I still am actively getting help because I'm actively struggling with different things. Life comes and hits you, but I just know how to handle them differently, much, much differently than I did before.
So, I mean, you go out into the community and talk to students. What is the feedback from these individuals who are hopefully having like incredible breakthroughs from your
Yeah.
words?
Yeah. Yeah, it's been beautiful. The last 7 years doing this work and speaking with students, student athletes, and coaches, and sharing my story and my message, and messages that I really share, like it's okay to not be okay, and that you don't have to wait for your struggles to get so big and overwhelming like I did to start getting help for yourself, and your voice matters and you're worthy of getting help and all of these different messages. And it's been really, really incredible over these last 7 years to see student athletes come up to me after my talk and say things like, I didn't realize that if I was being negative with myself and that was causing anxiety around my performance, that I could talk to somebody about that. Like so many people think that they have to wait until they're so depressed that they can't get out of bed to talk to somebody, to take care of themselves, to show up for themselves. And it's been so beautiful the amount of narratives that have shifted and the amount of student athletes who have then gone and talked to their coaches or booked a session with the counseling department after hearing me speak. And I remember back in like 2019, there was a yes. Yeah, there was a male lacrosse player, and I'll never forget this. He said to me, "Because of you, I now have the strength to go and make an appointment with the counseling center." And like that was like so early in my career, and I was like, "This work matters so much." For this athlete to feel so seen. And he had told me like I've been struggling for so long, and like now because of you, I finally have the strength. And like it's what keeps me going, honestly, because it's not easy. But these students, they matter and they deserve that support. So it's been so beautiful, so beautiful.
So I see that you have your Master's of Public Health. What is the intersection of public health and mental health?
Yeah, yeah. So it's a really great intersection, actually. So public health is really like having that preventative approach, right? And I think in the work that I do in my mental health talks and workshops, it's really helping from that preventative approach and that you don't have to wait. But also, public health is meeting people where they're at too. So we want to have a preventative approach. That's the goal. But especially for these schools who are still trying to figure it out and students who are still trying to figure it out, so many of us are burnt out, overwhelmed, exhausted, and then just drowned by the pressures and expectations. And so, if you are in that space, the message is not that there's no hope for you or you waited too long. The message is no, this is still a great time for you to take care of yourself and pour into yourself before it continues and gets worse. So, it's a really beautiful intersection because with public health, really meeting the community and people where they're at, but also really providing the tools to help them to prevent their struggles from getting worse or prevent them from struggling.
What does it mean to be mental health first aid certified? That sounds so cool.
Yeah, I recommend everybody get certified mental health first aid. It's a beautiful training. I think it's only a couple $100. It's 8 hours. You can do it in a day over the course of a couple days. And if you think about first aid, so CPR and helping somebody in a physical health crisis, it's the same thing with the mental health first aid, helping someone in a mental health crisis. So the goal isn't to become a mental health professional, but the goal is to be able to become knowledgeable about how you could help somebody who is struggling. So it goes back to my earlier point. Instead of taking inaction, you can notice that someone is struggling and you can go up to them and say, "Hey, I'm here for you," right? Asking questions, and being vulnerable and listening and validating, like all of these things, knowing that it's okay to ask the question, "Are you feeling suicidal?" Knowing that's a hard question to ask, but being prepared with the tools if someone says yes, knowing who to call, what to do, right? So it's like really equipping people with the tools to know what to do to support someone in a mental health crisis, but also the day-to-day mental health challenges that people will face. So I highly recommend that everybody get trained in mental health first aid so you really have those tools when the conversation happens, because in this day and age, it's so incredible. We're having more conversations. You are more likely to get into a conversation where someone says that they're not okay. And so you want to know what to do and how you can support them. But regardless if you get certified in mental health first aid, the biggest thing to always remember is just to listen and validate, even if you don't understand. Like those are the two key things to do if someone comes to you with a struggle, because it makes more of a difference than we even realize.
What are you doing now that you wish you would have done in college with your mental health?
Yeah, I think what I'm doing now of just having the space to have consistent outlets in therapy to talk to and process with, as well as like consistent self-care tools to really work on self-love and compassion and self-worth and confidence, has been really, really impactful that I totally wish I had more of when I was an athlete.
You were talking about identity post collegiately and how that kind of sent you into a spiral. What do you identify with now that helps your mental health?
hmm Yeah, I think one of the biggest things that I identify with now that's really helping my mental health, I've recently started getting more into the world of somatics and like healing through your body, because there's like so much stored trauma and stress in our bodies that we don't know how to shake off. And I know I have a lot of that. And so that's been really, really helpful too, to start to learn those like nervous system regulation tools that like I truly wish we had known more about. I mean, we didn't even know a lot about mental health at that point in college athletics, but um, that's just been like so beautiful for me now to like really begin to embody self-love in a different way that takes it a step beyond the affirmations and just like the awareness and the talk therapy. It takes it a step beyond, which has been awesome.
When did you start your blog and what has the feedback of it been?
Yeah, so I started Beautifully Simply You in 2018. That was like the jumping off point for my speaking business. So when I decided I wanted to share my story, I was like, oh, I'll just start blogging. I love to write. And it was great, except like in the beginning, it was only like friends and family reading it. So that's what led me into the speaking world. But blogging has been a really great way to connect with people and sharing my story a lot more vulnerably, and like the nuances of what happens in everyday or every week life, which I think added another layer for folks that might have seen me speaking on a stage and like, oh, she still looks so happy and perfect and yada yada. It's like the blog is a great way for me to share as well. Like, no, it's not perfect. And this is what I am already like I'm going through while I'm also speaking on stage and sharing this message that's important to me. I also have to be reminded of that message as well.
That is the end of my questions. Is there anything that you think that I missed about telling your story?
Um, I think the only thing might be once you said the blog, I thought about my book, You Are Worth Fighting For. So maybe I can talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, awesome. Yeah, and so then through speaking and wanting to just extend my impact and really just have something like tangible for people to take away from my talks, I wrote my book in 2022, which is called You Are Worth Fighting For. And it's a guide to help people define their sense of self-love and mental wellness. It's based off of 12 life lessons that my mom, who passed away, left me with. And each life lesson I take and I put my own spin on it to help you define mental wellness and self-love based off my own journey and all of the education that I have and what I've learned. So that's been beautiful too. A lot of schools have bought that for their coaches or student athletes, and that's been fun to have students reach out to me after about how much the book has impacted them, not only as they're reading it, but years later. So I'm just so grateful. Like I run into students years later and they're like, your talk changed my life. And I'm like, or your book changed my life. And it just, yeah, I'm just so thankful, so blessed in this work.
I mean, it's crazy to think where you were, and then now you have student athletes and coaches from all over the country reaching out and saying, "You changed my life."
Yeah. Yeah. I'm definitely just I can't like sometimes I can't even really fathom it, but I'm just very blessed. I mean, I think no one wants to struggle in the ways that I did or in the ways that they are currently struggling in, but there really is always beauty on the other side of it. It's just about allowing your body and your brain to know that you are worthy of making it through to the other side and that it is possible. You don't have to stay stuck where you're at. And that's unfortunately the mentality of a lot of people, but with the right help and the supports that can be different. Like you're not stuck in your pain. There is the other side of it. And so I'm grateful that the story that I had, the struggles that I had, have allowed me to be making the impact that I am right now.
What do you think is the best thing that has come out of this increased vulnerability?
I think the best thing that's come out of it is to help like inner Ivy, like inner child Ivy, to have the message that she never heard and to be able to share the message with students in a way that I wish I had heard, a way that I needed to hear. I needed a speaker to come or a coach to say and normalize and be vulnerable and allow for space for me to be seen and heard. And so that really like heals a part of me. And then also, I have a 3-year-old daughter. And so for me, I'm like, well, these students will one day be her coaches, her mentors, her bosses, and if they are educated to be more compassionate towards themselves around mental health, they'll be more compassionate towards others around their mental health. And that's how we just have this like beautiful ripple effect, this domino effect around mental wellness and self-love that my daughter will just hopefully have that message just ingrained in her from the adults that are around her. So that also feels like a really beautiful impact of it as well.
I know, I feel like in the years post-COVID, the conversations that I've been having have really opened up in a way that I didn't anticipate.
Mhm.
The post-COVID landscape has put a massive push on mental health conversations, and I love it. I love talking about
Hmm.
the post-COVID mental health dialogue because it's changed so much in like the last few years.
Yeah, absolutely. It's actually interesting because I started my business 2018 and then obviously COVID happened 2020. And at first I was like, well, what does this mean for my business? Like I'm just starting. And especially in athletic departments, there was this huge shift that we need to talk about mental health. And it was actually wild how often I was speaking. I was like Zoom traveling. I would have like 3 talks on a day, and I was like in California and Minnesota, and like all from my living room. Um, but it was incredible because the student athletes they needed support during that time, and there was this massive push. I created this mental health support for student athletes during COVID course that was really helpful for a lot of those athletes, just to really feel less alone with the identity shift that they were having and like your world coming crashing down from like competing to then having to go home for who knows how long. And like not being able to compete or practice and like the fears around your body and how that's going to change. And it just becomes this, whirlwind of thoughts. And so after COVID, I think there's just been such a huge dynamic shift. And like, some people I think maybe took steps back and were like, oh, well, now COVID's done and well done. And and now we don't need to do as much for mental health. But for the majority of schools, I've seen a shift of like, let's continue to have these conversations because clearly like the stress, the pressure doesn't go away and we need to support them. So I definitely think that COVID, although was so devastating for our country and for the world, but there was a beautiful byproduct of it for mental health. And I think there's just been like just such a huge shift where I'm not necessarily like convincing people anymore that we should have these conversations. Before it was like, oh, this is why. And now it's like, oh, no, we do need this. And like, what else can we do? Like, what more can we do? And I think that's where schools are at, which is really, really awesome to see the shift.
One more thing that I was just kind of working through as a perfectionist who is theoretically based on final products,
Mm.
when you have a situation like your mental health that is never a finished product, how do you deal with the waxing and waning of success?
Yeah, yeah, that's a really beautiful question. I think with perfectionism, although like I'm a recovering perfectionist, like it's just something that's a part of me. I think giving compassion to that part of you and also knowing that, searching out for perfection is this unattainable goal. And it's just always going to make you feel bad about yourself. And so, what if you could just be okay with the idea that it's going to be messy? And actually, messy is what's going to help you to see the other side quicker. When you're constantly looking for that perfectionism in your healing journey, it's going to actually make it a lot harder and a lot longer because you're going to be more frustrated with yourself of why am I not getting this right? But, your triggers, your traumas, the past anxieties, like those things are just a part of you. We can't forget them, right? We can rewire them. We can change our response to them. We can have more compassion towards them, but you will be triggered again. You will experience hardship. You will experience anxiety. You might experience a depressive episode, but it doesn't make you a failure. And what I think is so important for people to see is that no matter what happens to you, no matter what mental health challenge you face, like you as a person have always been and will always be worthy. Like just because you might struggle with anxiety does not mean that you are a failure or you are an anxious person. You just have anxiety. Like and that's okay, right? I have anxiety. Like I struggle with depression. And that's okay. And that's okay. So I think it's about seeing that no matter what you do, your accomplishments, your mental health, anything like that, like you will always be worthy. And that has helped me with the perfectionist piece. Like I said, it's a journey. But I think that the sooner that you can realize that it's not going to be a straight line, it's not going to be linear. You're supposed to have down parts, you're supposed to have struggles. It's just part of life. The sooner you can have more compassion for yourself. I think when it's like you've had a very long period of struggles without that support, without feeling better at all, okay, then let's investigate that. Let's get support for you. But it's not that you're supposed to be happy all the time because that's just not realistic.